So let's get into Phoenix then.
Let's do it.
Because I think, like we've already said this again off podcast, we were both surprised by Phoenix on a rewatch. So this is David Yates. Now, am I right in saying that he stayed on? Yes, he did.
Yeah,
David Yates
and
directed the
indeed
last.
he has still stayed on and is doing Fantastic Beasts.
Of course he is. Yes, there we go. So this is obviously based on the 2003 novel, the fifth installment, and this is again Harry Potter's fifth year. So now we're past my. Oh no, we're not past my territory yet. We're in year 11. We're all right. We're still there. Um, and this is basically the Ministry of Magic and the big denial that Voldemort's back until right at the end when they see him and go, "Oh, he's back." Fancy that.
Yeah, this has aged very well. This is the fake news movie.
yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. And yeah, so it was shot between February and November 2006. The film's budget was reportedly between 75 mil and 100 mil, and it grossed somewhere around 942. But, and I fell into a well of this when I first read it, as a case of Hollywood accounting.
Oh yes,
because
this
of
is
Warner
really
Brothers.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that it actually lost 167 million.
Yeah.
Like this whole Hollywood accounting thing, I'm just going to have a refresh of my memory because, again, I would have read this in October and we're now, Feb, March time. That it's more to do with them inflating numbers and actually refusing to disclose certain things. Obviously, the internet doesn't work as I try and lord the Hollywood accounting.
Well, no, there's a story that so Ed Solomon, who's one of the creators of Bill and Ted, he also wrote the script for Men in Black. And so he obviously gets residual checks from Men in Black. But according to his finances that he gets back from that film, the studio claims that film has never made money.
Yeah. So I'm on it now. So it says here, so I'll kick off with the Ed Solomon. So he claims that Men in Black has never broken even despite grossing nearly 600 million against a $90 million budget. But we have no idea where this money's gone.
Yeah.
Gone in 60 seconds, grossed 240, but the studio declared a 212 loss. The real figure is actually closer to 90 million. Spider-Man, apparently, Stan Lee was awarded 10% of the net profits, and Spider-Man made more than 800 million in revenue, but apparently he's not got anywhere close to that. Again, because they must have just lost a lot of money. There were some other really interesting ones. Where are we? Despite grossing 153 million against a $26 million budget, the romantic comedy Yesterday reportedly lost 87.8 million. What happens here? Like, I really fell into a well of this when I looked at it. I thought, what is this? What's Hollywood accounting? Yeah, crazy times. Anyway, let's get back into Potter. So I've got much more for this one. I think, again, because it surprised me of like, you've always assumed this is a rubbish one. And now so enter this time, Tonks, lovely Tonks, Ministry of Magic, Luna Lovegood, Umbridge, Bellatrix, the Dementors, Lupin and Sirius are back. We start again at Privet Drive, and it felt, I think, a little bit before we'd been back there again, I think, just because we didn't start off there in Goblet of Fire. Harry is expelled for all of about 5 minutes because he uses magic to help Dudley with the Dementors.
Yeah, he's like, I hate to do it again, but in the book, there's quite a lot longer. There's a lot more prep for the hearing.
Right. Okay.
In the book. It's really interesting on a more general note with this one, because so Goblet of Fire is the one with all the hair.
Yes.
Because in Goblet of Fire, they all have the most hair that I've ever seen on a human being. I mean, I'm sporting some pretty cringeworthy lockdown locks myself, but they were on another level. And in Order of the Phoenix, it's the first time they look like adults.
Yeah, it really.
There's definitely kind of hit a curve of aging there between.
And I think the costumes as well, they seem to have,
yeah, definitely. Because again, Goblet of Fire sort of moved a bit more towards kind of Hogwarts clothes, a little bit. But Order again is quite sort of informal clothes type thing. I think David Yates' aesthetic is a lot more like Quaron's. I think that's where he took his cues from rather than Goblet. That opening is very strange stylistically, in the sort of that weird park that's in the middle of like a wheat field.
Yeah, there's just one swing there, like that really weird long shot that we get of Dudley just kind of like looking at him and like, you know,
And
he's
then
got his
when the
mates
Dementors
next to him.
show up, you get this strange like Blair Witch cam of them running, where it's getting those handhelds.
Yeah.
It's really odd.
I really like.
Might be the first handheld camera in a Harry Potter film.
Oh, that's warranting a rewatch. That just to check. I really like the idea of a secret society and like the Order of the Phoenix being a secret society. Hermione and Ron have been sworn to secrecy by Dumbledore. The thing that got me this time, and again, I don't know if this is a teacher thing and just with the relationship that you have to have with a student and things like that, but the whole thing of Dumbledore shutting Harry out to the point of where like he's literally trying to chase him down a corridor and he's shouting Professor and he's shouting Dumbledore and he's just blanking him.
Yeah,
and
this is the
doing?
one where Harry gets ghosted over and over again. Because like Dumbledore like swaggers in to like get him out of his suspension.
Yes, yeah, and then
immediately leaves without a word to Harry. Because and then Harry's all angsty about it at the beginning as well, because Ron and Hermione seem to know everything about the Order, and he's obviously been kept separate from it all. While he's been a
because I mean, if I did that to a student, I'd get, "You're blanking me, sir. You're blanking me. What's going on here?" And it's just like it's insane to look at it.
Yeah, because I think Order of the Phoenix is the book where like Harry is like hiding outside the Dursleys' living room to hear the news, because obviously he's very aware that Lord Voldemort has just come back and he wants to know what's going on, and no one's telling him.
This is beginning to develop that Snape and Harry history storyline that we get towards the end. And again, similar to the Riddle stuff in Chamber of Secrets, really like this because it's building it. We can believe what comes before and after. Proper heroes entrance in order for the battle against the Death Eaters at the end.
So good.
It's like Endgame before there was Endgame.
It is like Portals, on your left.
They're all here. But again, we've already kind of mentioned this, but Sirius's death is very abrupt, and I'd forgotten how little he is in these films. Because again, like this is one of the ones that Ruby goes back to, and she had it on recently, and I was just sat there watching it, and you know that it's happening, and you've got that really. I'm actually really growing to it, that specific sound design where it's like woof, woof of all the ones, and then all of a sudden you get quite a quiet and quite a soft Avada Kedavra from Bellatrix, and then it's just well, that's it, it's gone. And there's no, I think what it should be credited for is that oftentimes in films, and again, similar to something we've just mentioned with Infinity War, when everyone starts vanishing towards the end, for whatever reason, it takes Spider-Man longer to vanish than anybody else, just so he can say, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. Whereas with this, it's like Avada Kedavra, one look, and he's gone. And I suppose that just makes it believable.
Yeah, it carries over from, because it's very similar to Cedric, where it's just kill the spare, bang, that's it.
Done, that's it. Yeah, there's no question about it. That's how powerful it is.
It's really powerful, the Sirius scene is, because they've obviously just had that moment where they're fighting side by side, and Sirius calls him James. And then almost from miles away, it just cuts to Bellatrix doing the spell. And then that's it.
Because I'd written here, so if it's emotional heft and building up Bellatrix as a key antagonist that you're looking for, then I thought, I mean, it does it well anyway, but I thought actually she might have been more better placed to kill Lupin here, because like obviously we're introducing Tonks, so you've got an extra thing of they're together, there's more emotional heft there, but actually we've seen more of Lupin at this point, and that might be a discredit to the films rather than the books, or I might just be arguing with how the books were written here. But I think Black might have been a really good key death somewhere later on.
Yeah, I think the reason for it, at least in the books, is that Sirius Black's story had sort of finished. Whereas, because I don't think Lupin and Tonks are portrayed as together in this one. They're certainly not.
I don't think they are actually. Yeah,
they're certainly not in the film, because obviously we see them very briefly in Half-Blood Prince, and Tonks has got the sort of mousy brown hair now.
Yeah,
and then they're leaving the burrow together.
Yeah. And then they mention the sun in Hallows, and
Whereas obviously in this one, Tonks is still doing the colourful hair.
Yeah.
Metamorph Magus stuff.
Yeah.
He says dropping in some lore there the film never mentioned.
Well, educate me. I wrote that it's going full Star Wars with Dumbledore and Voldemort's battle as Harry watches on.
You see, I think when I first saw it, I went, "Oh, that's a bit much in it." I think, but watching it now, I was like, "This is great."
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that I've had like a decade of Marvel spectacle now.
Oh right, yeah, so
this feels more like Marvel spectacle than whatever was happening in 2007 or whatever when this came out. So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I really like it. I like the idea. I remember thinking about that. I like the idea of these wand battles feeling like, I suppose, lightsaber battles, where it's like, I'm just going to fire whatever I can at you. And I think I'd written going full Star Wars because it did remind me of that scene from A New Hope where Luke just watches Vader and Kenobi just go at it. And I think overall for this one, for me, it starts really strong, it ends really strong. There's a bit in the middle that's a bit up and down, but I like the Dolores Umbridge stuff because
doesn't she make your skin crawl?
Yeah, but that's so great, isn't it? Well, like all those little rules that she's getting filched to put up, and but again,
I mean, like, not to get overly political, but Umbridge feels very relevant after a decade of Tory government.
Yeah,
because
she does actually.
Umbridge is all about. Umbridge is not about cartoon evil like Voldemort. Umbridge is about the evil inherent within systems.
Yes,
so she's like the embodiment of how callous the system can be. Like, because she's a psychopath. Like, she has the quill that burns words into the back of people's hands, and she decides to torture them at the end. She doesn't quite get to, but she says she's going to torture them before they take her to the forest.
The one thing that I've always that has got my back up is if you're going to introduce something new, whether it's a rule or whether it's a procedure or a process or anything, tell me to my face, or tell me in a meeting, or tell me in a group of people, and I can understand it. And it's really, really niche and picky. But if you just write it somewhere and put it somewhere, right, it's going to bother me so much. And all of her rules that she doesn't physically sort of go, we're introducing rule number 422 and you're not allowed to do this. And it's just like, that's there and that's the rule.
But she doesn't have to go through systems because she has the backing of, the quote unquote prime minister. So she's got everything she needs. And so that's what it is. It's about it's the violence of systems. There's that line right at the beginning. She does her little speech at the sorting ceremony, and no one can work out what she said because she's done that very smart, very well written and well observed thing where politicians talk for ages without saying anything. Yeah. And they look at Hermione, and Hermione goes, "The Ministry is interfering at Hogwarts," and it's the first time that Hogwarts is not a complete monolith separate from everything else. It's the first time Hogwarts is part of the ecosystem where, because Dumbledore and Harry are now seen as, to quote a famous headline from the last few years, enemies of the people.
Yeah.
Because they're seen in this light. And I don't know, maybe all of this nonsense that I'm talking now is why I liked Order of the Phoenix more this time.
Because you've got that almost contextual stuff with it.
Yeah. It feels like it has more context now. And so I think, from a film studies point of view, it's perhaps far more interesting as an artifact now than it was when it was made, because you can read into it so many things about the state of the real world. And those, obviously J.K. Rowling is a very political woman. And so this stuff isn't there by accident. She was, very pointedly making arguments here. And so I think Umbridge is a fascinating villain for that reason, because of what she represents. As one fights like lightsaber battles is brilliant. I remember watching this and then when I got the DVD, going through the special features, and there's one where, Gary Oldman and David Thewlis are talking about being taught how to do these lightsaber battles. Not lightsaber, but see, I'm doing it now. These wand battles, because we hadn't really seen them in the series up till now.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen, wand duels. Like in the Philosopher's Stone, Quirrell just sort of jumps at Harry.
Yeah.
And then in the other ones, he's fighting like creatures rather than people with wands. And then him and Voldemort isn't really a fight.
No, it just seems so weird because they supposedly got these really powerful things at their disposal. And at this point, this is when we finally start using them.
Yeah.
And seeing that they could just really do some damage to each other, actually.
It's great because you've got all of the, like particularly Gary Oldman, it seems like he really got into it. Because he's got all this choreography with the wand that's really cool. And that's the sort of choreography you'd see throughout the rest of the series. So in terms of establishing that, this does a really good job. Yeah, I really feel like I've shortchanged this film in the past, so I'm glad to have sort of seen the light on it. Really.
No, I feel the same way because very quickly, and like in the past, when someone would say to you like, "What's your rank order of Harry Potter?" and what I know we'll get to ours in a little bit, but this and I would say Half-Blood Prince were always the ones where I just thought, "Oh, they're a bit, aren't they?" Like I always assumed, and for whatever reason, thought and was of the opinion that post, for me anyway, Goblet of Fire, there was a dip, and then we restored it at the end with Hallows Part 2. And actually, I would say Phoenix is on par for me with maybe something like Chamber and maybe even Philosopher's Stone. And actually, for whatever reason, I discredited. And I don't know what year we're talking here, 2007. Like, what 2007. I don't know what was going on in my life at that time for me to discredit it that much.
Because I would have been, I think, probably sort of year 8, year 9, year 10 kind of era when I saw this, and I don't know if there was a part of me that was in that sort of phase where I was like getting too old for it.
Right. Yeah.
And like before I came back around to like, I love this artifact of my childhood again.
Well, yeah, because it's a bit weird. Because for me, so I would have been 17. I would have been at college, and again, I would have watched it because the weekends at that point were me and my now wife Amy just meeting each other in Manchester and going watching a film, and that's probably what it would have been. And maybe we both kind of just had the same opinion of it, because then as you go through, it's like, oh, it's another Harry Potter film. We'll go and watch it because we've seen all the rest of them. And then I remember vividly the ending of Hallows Part 2, and just being like, that's 10 years of my life done. Like, what do I do now?
I'll talk about that more when we get to Deathly Hallows Part 2. But I think off the top of my head, and I might be wrong here, this was the first one, Order of the Phoenix, that we didn't go and see as like a whole family cinema trip.
Right, okay.
And so I don't know if that plays into it. I think actually the first time I saw this might have been on a pirate DVD.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah. And then I went and saw it at the cinema because I don't think my brain could countenance not seeing a Harry Potter film at the cinema. But
because that definitely has a thing to it, because like with Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, we're all going to go as a family. We're going to go on a Sunday or whatever it is, and then Azkaban was, I'm 14, I'm going to go and watch it with my mates. And then I think from there it just spirals from there. Which I suppose actually is quite sad that you've not maintained this tradition throughout all of them. But oh well. Anyway, right, let's get into Half-Blood then. So once again, we've got David Yates all the way through. So this is Harry Potter's 6th year. So now we're talking sixth form of time. And it's, for whatever reason, just occurred to me that 6 years means sixth form. I don't know why that's only just happened. My God. Right. So he receives a mysterious textbook, falls in love, and attempts to retrieve a memory that holds the key to Voldemort's downfall. And yeah, they filmed this in 2007. It was released in July of 2009, because we then began to get these big summer releases at that point, and this was where they fell into that. It was 1 day short of the 4th anniversary of the corresponding novel's release, which I suppose was quite nice. Estimated budget of 250 million. It's one of the most expensive films ever made, and the most expensive in the Harry Potter film series. And it premiered in London, obviously. The one thing that surprises me about this, so I mean, not that it made a ton of money, because we're all edging towards $1 billion here. Second highest grossing behind Avatar. It received positive reviews from the critics, with praise for Yates' direction, the performances, the cinematography, and the musical score, and the emotionally satisfying story. I think this is one of the weakest.
I think it's the weakest.
Okay. I mean, I've written a lot down, again, because I think by this point I was more into, like, what are the things that are going to come up here. So we get Professor Slughorn in this one, Jim Broadbent. Really weird introduction, I feel.
Not as weird. Like, so I don't know what... I love Jim Broadbent, but I don't know what he's doing here. I don't know what he's doing. The scene, my goodness, the Felix Felicis scene, where Harry goes and gets the memory from him, is one of the most bizarre 5-minute sequences. Like, I could write a book on that sequence. I don't know what is happening. Because Daniel Radcliffe, for some reason, acts like he's taken speed after he takes the potion. I don't know who directed, like, I don't know what David Yates said to him, but Daniel Radcliffe's performance is baffling. Jim Broadbent, when he does the eulogy to Aragog, and he gives it like, the body will decay, spirit lingers on. What are you doing, Jim Broadbent? And him and Robbie Coltrane are singing this drinking song, and Daniel Radcliffe is just sat there grinning at him. What is going on?
Just acid trip in the middle of a Harry Potter film.
It's like completely detached, because then after that he gets the memory and they look at the memory and then we're back to normal. And it's just...
I feel like, actually, I've been a little bit cynical when I'm having a look at my notes from the last time I watched it. So I'm definitely into least watched territory here, because I don't think I'd 100%. Seen this as much as everything 100%. Else. Dumbledore takes Harry to a small village and says, "I bet you're wondering why we're here." To which Harry says, "To be honest, I kind of just go with it after all these years." which we all do, Harry.
Which is a good line, because what the film has done up to that point is just weird. Like, it starts with Harry trying to get with the cafe girl at this train station.
Yes.
Because, like, suddenly sex is a thing. Like, flick a switch and sex is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, so they do that, and then Dumbledore, like, cock blocks Harry at the train station. They go to the weird village.
I ignored you for the entire last film, but now that you're interested in someone, I'm here, Harry.
Yeah, now I'm here to ruin your love life. So that goes on, and then they go to the village, and then there's a scene with Snape doing the unbreakable vow, and it's just the problem is all of this stuff is necessary scene setting.
Right.
It all has to be there, but because all of the films have this. This is not just this one. Every single film does this. It's a rush to get to Hogwarts every time.
Yeah. Yep.
Every single time. All of the stuff that happens before Hogwarts is like a prologue, and they like ram it in so quickly. You know, the possible exception being the first one for obvious reasons.
Because we get the mystical kind of...
Yeah, they have to establish it all. Yeah. But in, Goblet especially, it's like one scene at the World Cup, like, boom, boom, we're there.
We're back in.
Like even the reaction to the World Cup stuff, they're on the train. Like, it's... And so I think that's a real problem here, because it means all of that stuff is like so truncated, and it's so stop-start until they get to the school.
I'd put that this is just Snape's film. I think this is the key Snape film, which is sad because I don't like it as much as I like most of them, and I really like Snape. But I just think there's a couple of different things that are going on here. I put praise be everybody.
I think the problem is that the story is the Snape story. He's in the title. It's him and Harry that are in the title. Mm-hmm. But the film isn't interested in that. The film's interested in the teen romance stuff.
Because the whole thing at the end, the whole thing at the end where he says, "I'm the Half-Blood Prince," it's such a poor reveal.
Yeah.
For something that is supposedly a massive thing.
Yeah.
I mean, praise be, he's finally the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher after how long? A couple of things that I remember from watching it again this time. So Katie's curse after the 3 broomsticks is shocking, where she just gets thrown up in the air and then slammed back. That really surprised me, actually.
The shot of her, like, suspended in the air, like, screaming silently is really spooky.
Yeah, he really is. There's a nice little conversation between Hermione and Ron where Hermione says she's only interested in you because she thinks you're the chosen one, and Ron goes, "But I am the chosen one."
It's lovely.
Oh no, is it Harry? Yeah, I think it might be Harry.
Harry.
Yeah, sorry,
It's
it's Harry. It just tickled me.
So the other switch that flicks on at the start of this movie is suddenly Harry likes Ginny.
Yeah, because I thought that was really weird. How all really of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, like, is this a thing?
In the book, it's like, it's never explicit, but it's sort of seeded. Like, I've read a really good, it's really long. I wouldn't recommend anyone who's not a super fan to read it, but it's this really long thing where they've gone through the books and they've like noted every time Harry like prioritizes Ginny almost.
Right.
So like there'll be a scene where it's just him talking to various people and there'll be a line saying, and Ginny was in the corner doing such and such. He always notices what Ginny's doing.
Right.
That's through all the books, which I think is a really nice little thing that she put in, obviously knowing that was where this was going.
Yeah.
And like there's lots of little nice things that Harry does for Ginny, like in Chamber of Secrets. You know how Lockhart gives him all of his books?
Yeah, yeah.
In the book, Harry gives that set of books to Ginny and buys his own.
Right, okay.
Because obviously the Weasleys are all worrying about, got to buy 6 or 7 sets of this really expensive load of books.
Yeah.
And so Harry helps them out by giving, but he doesn't give his to Ron.
He gives them to
Ginny.
Mm.
And there's loads of little bits like that. But in the films, he barely even notices Ginny. And then in this one, he can't take his eyes off her.
Because there are, to be fair, a couple of scenes where you can tell that Ginny maybe fancies Harry.
Yeah.
Because he's like the slightly older boy, he's my mate's, he's my brother's mate and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it's never reciprocated until all of a sudden, bam, right here we are.
And it's taken, it's not explained to us as an audience. It's just sort of taken for granted.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like these later films do this a lot. And I don't know if you feel this, having not read the books, but I feel like the films assume everyone's read the books.
Well, I was about to say the same thing. And even though I didn't read the books, Amy, my wife, who did, and she was very much like you, where new one comes out, she will read it. She told me all the big things that happened. So I'd known like everything that was going to come up. Yeah. So again, it was, I suppose it is this idea of common knowledge. And actually, you've just reminded me of possibly a little bit of a side note. Big Bang Theory. There's something in the later seasons where, for whatever reason, Leonard goes back and reads the Harry Potter books. And Sheldon turns around and says, oh, remember to do this when Dumbledore dies or something. And then Leonard has the reaction of, why are you spoiling it for me? And it's like, you're rereading them? You know that he's dead? And then like later on in the same episode.
Is it because they wanted to do because the thing is, a lot of sort of geek culture TV shows around this time did this, where they wanted to do an episode about spoilers.
Probably, yeah.
And so they had to find a spoiler they could do that wouldn't be too much of a spoiler for the viewers.
Yeah.
That would be enough of a spoiler for the characters. Like, I think in Community, the sitcom, I think they invented a show that was Game of Thrones, but not Game of Thrones.
Right, okay.
In order to do that episode.
Yeah, right. Because there's even a point where he goes to speak to Penny, and Penny says, like in the Harry Potter books where Harry and Ginny get together. And he just goes, oh, Harry and Ginny get together. And it's like, you know this. You've read this before. Anyway. I thought the really good set piece in this film was the Death Eaters at the Burrows. And so Harry runs after Bellatrix. Ginny goes after Harry. Lupin and Tonks go after Harry. Arthur goes for Ginny. No one's left at the Burrows. Oh, actually, no, some of them are. But then the Death Eaters apparates the house and burn it down. And that was the only thing that I remembered about this film that I could actually call back on.
Yeah. I remembered it too because I hate it.
Oh, right. Okay, go on. Why?
Well, for starters, not to sound like a broken record, but it's not in the book. But, right. No, okay, there's a big bugbear. And this is in the opening sequence as well with Millennium Bridge.
Okay, yeah. I like that. Come on.
The Death Eaters can fly.
Okay.
They're not supposed to be able to fly.
Is it not the apparition thing? Are they not supposed to be able to do that? But they're not,
because an apparating is, as we see with Dumbledore and Harry,
yeah,
they just disappear and appear.
Right, yeah, okay.
Apparating is almost like teleporting.
Whereas they've literally got like a trail of smoke behind them.
Yeah.
Right,
there's a whole in Deathly Hallows at the very beginning where they're all polyjuiced into Harry and they're all flying and they get attacked. In the book, there's a big thing that they see Voldemort, and Voldemort is flying, and that's a massive deal.
Right. Okay.
Because no one can fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's a scene later on where where Snape jumps out the window.
Yes.
To escape the school.
Yeah.
Then Snape can fly, and that's a big deal because he's obviously learnt it off Voldemort.
Right. Okay.
So they're the only two characters that I can remember that are able to fly. And so whenever the Death Eaters fly, it makes me want to tear my eyes out.
Because everyone's doing it, it doesn't come across as special as
exactly.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I just struggle with that set piece because it's not. I feel like it's only there because in the film there aren't that many set pieces.
Yeah.
Because they cut the big set piece from the end of the book, which is the first battle of Hogwarts.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first battle of Hogwarts ends the sixth book.
Right.
Because Malfoy lets all the Death Eaters in through the cabinets.
Yeah.
And they're fighting with the school people while Malfoy goes up to have his confrontation with Dumbledore.
Because it is a little bit jarring, the fact that Malfoy lets them in. No one else is doing anything in the castle. Yeah. And we're all just up in the tower.
Even when they kill Dumbledore and Bellatrix is swaggering through the Great Hall, breaking stuff, blowing stuff up. There's no resistance. She's just...
surely, maybe McGonagall, you get this idea that Dumbledore senses that something's wrong. Surely McGonagall is that high-powered of a witch, wizard, whatever you want to call it, that maybe she would do something similar. Yeah.
But no, they have a big fight in the book, but they cut it because it's too similar in their mind to the end of the next one.
Yeah.
So that's why they did it. But I guess that left them short of a big set piece, so they put the Burrow stuff in.
Yeah.
It's also annoying because the Burrow's just rebuilt exactly the same in the next one.
Oh yeah, they took a picture, they remembered, and they put everything back exactly as it was.
Which really undercuts it. If you're going to have them lose their home to the Death Eaters, write that into the next film. Make it a big deal.
Don't just let it be, the Weasleys have built the house again.
Yeah. Well, they obviously went, bollocks, we need that for the next film. Because that's where they all fly when they're all Harry. They're all going back to the Burrow.
Who said you
they all
could
flew
burn
back
this down?
and it was just wreckage.
So last couple of things then. So Harry damn near kills Malfoy with a spell from the Potions book, which is the Setzer Sempra.
Surprisingly gory in the film.
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah. It's very bloody. Yeah, very bloody. Yeah. I thought there was a lot of filler in this. They're bringing in the Horcruxes. You can tell that they're building to something, and you're just
I said
okay.
Earlier, most of the book of Half-Blood Prince is really inside baseball fan stuff where they're going into Voldemort's past.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's all of Dumbledore's lessons are going through these memories. We only see 2 or 3 of them in the film, but there's loads of them in the book. And as a fan, I love all that stuff. But I can totally understand why it's not in the film.
And then obviously the big kind of finale of this is Snape killing Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Which, I think it still has the emotional crux and the heft that it needs. And but then we end up with...
What's interesting is a story broke this week, actually, about the finale of this film.
Okay.
So in the book, Dumbledore has a massive funeral.
Right.
Because obviously he's this enormous figure in the magical community. You'd expect him to have a big funeral, and it's attended by all of the famous witches and wizards. Lots of magical creatures attend it.
Right.
It's a big spectacle, but it's not in the film. And so there was an interview this week, or last week, with Ivana Lynch, who plays Luna Lovegood.
Yes.
She was interviewed on the podcast hosted by the Phelps brothers, who played the Weasley twins.
Okay.
They have a podcast, and they interviewed Ivana Lynch, and she said she was a big fan of the books, and she really wanted them to do Dumbledore's funeral. So she went to David Heyman and said, "What? Can we put this in the film?" And he went, "Oh, it's too expensive." And she said, "I will donate my salary if we can do this scene." And David Heyman apparently said to her, "It would not be enough."
Oh my God.
So again, it was a budget thing was why they didn't do it. And so they do that thing where they all put their wands in the air.
Yeah.
And apparently they had to CGI extra tears onto some of the characters because it wasn't sad enough.
Jeez. I mean, the ones in the air is nice enough, but I would have liked a funeral, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Instead, you get the big like grandiose like coffin thing with the white.
Yeah. And again, like Endgame, let's have a Tony Stark funeral where we throw a lot of characters in. And
characters you've not thought about for a decade.
Yeah.
The kid from Iron Man 3.
Aged. Yeah.
Who, even, I consider myself a Marvel fan. When it like hovered the camera on him in the cinema, I was like, who's that?
Well, similar reaction, but again, I think prepped by how much Marvel had made us go, what's that thing in that corner over there? Me and my wife were both like, who's that? Who's that? Why is he here? Why is he here? And then it's like, oh, it's the kid from Iron Man 3. Oh, so it's nothing to do with any future film then.
No, it's just supposed to be a nice little reference for...
Yeah.
But because he's aged so much...
He's now 6 foot taller.
Yeah.
Right, let's get into the final two then. So, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now, let's do this first. Split into two, yes or no?
At the time, I was a bit like, what? Why are they doing that?
Yeah.
Watched as... I like both movies. And I feel like I would have liked both of them less if they tried to put it all into one. So yes, actually, surprising myself, I'm in favour of it.
So I'm opposite to that because I think Part 2 is my second favourite behind Azkaban, and I think Part 1 is my least favourite of all of them. And I think probably a similar argument that you would have to The Hobbit is that there's a much better film, I think, taking out all the padding that you get in the first one. The second one, actually, is really succinct and is the shortest of the lot of them. I would have sat there for 3 hours if you'd asked me to and watch a slightly bigger, all in one, but, we'll deal with that when we deal with that. So this is obviously coming towards the end of the whole journey. This follows Harry Potter, who's been asked by Dumbledore to find and destroy Voldemort's secret to immortality, which is the Horcruxes. And this again received positive reviews, praising the performances, the cinematography, the visual effects, and the musical score. Again, one of the highest grossing films of the year. It was only behind Alice in Wonderland and Toy Story 3 in 2010. And it received 2 nominations at the Oscars for Best Art Direction and Visual Effects, which seemed to be a common occurrence here. So there's a very dark opening with Voldemort meeting the army at the Malfoy's house, which again really sets the tone well. Hermione obliviates her parents' memories in something that was just like, oh my God, like...
Horrifying.
Yeah, really?
Horrifying.
Is that how we're starting this?
Is that how we're treating the actor who played Catelyn Stark in Game of Thrones?
Yes, we are. So you get Mad-Eye Moody, the Weasleys, including Bill and Fleur Delacour, Hagrid, Lupin, Tonks, and Mundungus, and Kingsley all meeting at Privet Drive. And they kick off the kill count really early in this film. So the War in the Sky with the Death Eaters, Hedwig, poor Hedwig.
I vividly remember having to put the book down when Hedwig died. Because it's so early. It's so early.
It is so early. I mean, I've written here, who have had a cadaver as an owl? Like, come on.
The thing I like best as well is that they have had a cadaver the owl, and that Death Eater just sods off. Like, my work is done. I've got the owl.
I've got one. There's enough for you. Get the rest of them. Like I've got the easy one.
Because when they arrive back at the burrow, they go, "What gave you away?" And he says, "Hedwig. She tried to protect me."
Yeah.
So that Death Eater knew that Harry was the real one and just flew off.
Oh my days! No, like we've got the owl. That means he's weak. Like,
exactly.
Let's get him again.
The thing I like about the owl is like when I was reading the book, like that felt like such a statement of intent from J.K. Rowling. It's like there are no safe characters now.
Yeah, no one's safe anymore. We've got the owl first. So Mad-Eye Moody dies as well at this point. George is severely wounded. We then kind of weirdly fast forward to something a little bit more light, which is Bill and Fleur's wedding. Because, why not?
Yeah.
They apparate to Shaftesbury Avenue after it all kicks off there in London, which actually, I as soon as Hermione said, "Oh, this is Shaftesbury Avenue. I used to come here a lot for the theatre with my parents," I was like, Quick Google. That's where the cursed child is. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be?
Yes, it is. It's right on the corner. It's the Palace Theatre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, like that's where I live, because that area of London is where all the film screenings are.
Oh, fair enough then.
So that's basically where I live most of the time, outside of the pandemic, obviously. Is between Piccadilly Circus and Covent Garden is basically where I spend most of my life.
Very busy place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember once I was just sat eating my lunch on the Eros statue in the middle of Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah.
And I accidentally eavesdropped on the start of a Harry Potter tour.
Oh, nice.
That they were doing. And the guy doing the tour was brilliant, because he was just like, at some point you're going to ask me where the cafe is that they go to.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Get that out of your minds right now.
Yeah,
you're
it's
having
great.
a coffee from
he was really funny. I might have to go and do his tour one
day. We get then a decent Polyjuice portion set piece where Harry gets the Horcrux off Umbridge and they're all in the Ministry of Darkness. I think that's quite a good piece. I vividly remember that from the first time watching it. And then, unfortunately for me, I'm interested to see your alternate take on this. We then just get Harry Potter goes camping at Godric's Hollow.
Harry on camping.
Yeah, and I just when we watched it again, I was with it up until the point, and then all of a sudden they're in a tent, and I just thought, come on, you're gonna start dancing in a bit. What's happening here? And they go to Xenophilius Lovegood to try and find out about the Deathly Hallows, and then you get that Three Brothers animation, which to me was really surprising. And
it's fantastic. It's beautiful.
It's beautifully animated, but I thought, is this a bit out of place? But I don't know. I understand why they did it. Again, that was probably a budget thing.
It's necessary exposition. It has to be.
It's cheaper exposition.
It's a cheaper way of doing it. I actually have quite a lot of love for Deathly Hallows 1.
Okay.
Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson especially put a shift in this movie.
Yes.
The multiple Harrys scene where Daniel Radcliffe is playing all of them playing him is brilliant.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. Where the gag where Fred and George look at each other and go, "We're identical," is just that's a great joke. And then because Harry's being Fleur and he's got the bra on and he's like, "Oh yeah, Bill, look away,
look away," yeah.
And then also, there's a weird line in that where the Harry who is being played by Ron,
yes,
says, "I knew Ginny was lying about that tattoo," which implies to me that they've had sex, which is very non-J.K. Rowling.
That is surprising. I didn't pick up on that.
It suggests that Harry and Ginny have spent that whole summer just rolling around the burrow together.
Oh dear! As they're all building it. from
apparently so. Yeah. Because the teen romance stuff, I don't think we went into it enough in Half-Blood Prince, to be honest, because it's garbage. The Ron and Lavender Brown segment is possibly the worst thing.
Yeah.
Because then you get Hermione is angry about the Hermione and Ron stuff is actually fairly well seeded in Half-Blood Prince and in these two films, actually, the two Deathly Hallows ones. It's certainly better than Harry and Ginny.
Even in Goblet, actually, I would say, for the Ron and Hermione stuff, because she gets really cross with him, doesn't she, about certain things? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all quite well done. But yeah, the Ron and Lavender stuff is just abysmal. It's just really, really poor. Because then you get Hermione trying to get away from him out of Bridgerton, Cormac McLagan.
All right. I don't know.
And that's all stupid. But yeah, no, so I was fascinated at the start of this one for them to be a throwaway line about how Ginny is familiar with Harry's body.
Yeah, I did not pick up on that at all. Oh dear. There's one to go back and have a look at.
But yeah, so I quite like the camping stuff. I don't love it. I do think it's it's in the bottom half of my rankings. This one.
Okay.
Because I do think there's a lot of scene setting. I mean, as someone who didn't read the books, how much of the Horcrux stuff actually made sense? Not so much the concept of them, because the concept of them is fairly well explained. But the process they go through to find them.
I suppose you could kind of put it this way. So after we watched them all, we did a Zoom quiz with my friends, and they'd done, it wasn't specifically Harry Potter, but there was a question in it of how many Horcruxes are there, right? And in my head, I was so adamant, I went, there's 6. I said, there's 6, that's it, there's 6, right? Amy's saying to me, no, there's 8. There's 8. There's definitely 8. And I said, no, there's not, there's 6. And we had a big argument about it. It turns out there was 8. I think that was the number, right? And I think that boils down to maybe me not having gone through them being developed enough that it's more easy for me to forget about 1 or 2 or however many there are. Whereas Amy was so adamant that because she'd read the books, she knew specifically which ones they were and what they were.
I think there's 7.
Is the 7? It might have been 7. I don't know. I might have said 3.
It's the diary from Chamber of Secrets.
Mm.
The ring that Dumbledore destroys that he gets cursed by that messes his hand up.
Yeah.
The locket from the end of the 6th one that they get out of the cave.
Right.
Hufflepuff's cup that they get out of the Gringotts vault.
Yeah.
Ravenclaw's diadem, which is in the Room of Requirement.
Yeah.
Nagini the snake.
Mm-hmm.
And then Harry is the 7th one.
Yeah, because I remember what I'd done now. I said 3 because I got it confused with the Deathly Hallows.
Right.
And that symbol and going triangle, circle, line. There's 3. Yeah. And Amy was just like, so she must have said 7. Yeah.
Yeah. She probably very quietly went, it's not that, it's 7.
Yeah, and I was like, no, it's not. I remember the shape.
I've probably got that wrong now, and I'm going to get tweets from people going, call yourself a Harry Potter fan.
We'll leave it for when it happens.
No, so I think that's one of the, when I was watching the films, I was like thinking, like, to someone who's not read the books, this is incomprehensible. Why are they going to Gringotts to look for Hufflepuff's cup? What relevance is that to anything?
It was very kind of like pick up and move, pick up and move, pick up and move. And I got a bit, right, okay, all this stuff is happening.
Whereas in the books, there's a memory in Half-Blood Prince where young Voldemort goes to visit a woman called Hepzibah Smith, who's like an antique collector.
Right.
And she's got Hufflepuff's cup and I think Slytherin's locket as well.
Okay.
And so he steals those objects, kills her, and like uses her death to make one of the Horcruxes.
Right, okay. But, see, all this... Again, can you imagine if they'd actually put all this stuff in?
Yeah,
like,
well, the thing is, because it's more like, because that memory Dumbledore had collected from her house elf. So there's a whole thing about the house elves as well. There's lots of house elf stuff in the book. So did you know that Hermione is a big campaigner for house elf rights?
Nope.
See, she forms a society, I think it's in Goblet of Fire, actually, called Spew, which is the Society for the Protection of Elvish Welfare. And so she's a big advocate for house elf rights.
Oh dear. No, not a clue.
Because Dobby goes to work in the school kitchens after Dobby's freed.
Oh, right, yeah.
And Barty Crouch Senior has a house elf called Winky, who's an alcoholic.
Nice.
There's loads of that stuff.
Because there's the whole thing about Creature.
Yeah, there's a lot more Creature in the books. Yeah,
they're really kind of aggressive with him, and I just thought that comes out of it.
Because so you know, this is really deep dive now. When Harry and Dumbledore go to get the locket, they have to go through all those things to get to it.
Yes.
So Regulus Black, who got the real locket, he went with Creature.
Right. Okay.
So Creature tells them how Regulus Black got the locket in the book.
Right. Okay.
But in the film, they just look at the door, go Regulus Black, and then they work it out.
Because there's this whole thing of like, who's RAB? And then all of a sudden they go, oh, it's him. It's that guy.
The sign on the door says RAB.
Yeah. It must be him. Must be him.
And then they just go to Creature. And then Creature just does what they say, which must be mental if you're just watching the films. Yeah,
it is a bit like, because they're very aggressive with him and go like, come on, you need to tell us this thing. And then all of a sudden it just goes, all right then.
Yeah. Whereas in the book, it's established that because Sirius left the house to Harry in his will, that means Harry is Creature's master.
Right.
So Creature has no choice but to just do what he says.
Yeah. It's all these little things that just are making much more sense.
Like, they're not big issues if you're watching the film, but they just sort of niggle. And like, I wonder what that looks like. All the stuff about, well, we know it's Hufflepuff's cup, obviously.
Yeah.
And like Bellatrix says one line about, what else have you got out of my vault? And so they assume that Hufflepuff's cup's in Bellatrix's vault based on nothing.
Why not? Everything else is. Just throw it in there as well. Right. Yeah, I mean, the big final of this one, we've already kind of mentioned it. Dobby's death. To me, again, I mentioned it last time, like, it just comes across as a cheap death because he had such a big role in Chamber, really small and reoccurring role since, only really played a big part in the last 10 minutes of this, and we need to end it on an emotional thing. And they've chosen the quote-unquote cute character to die for then everyone to have the kind of outpouring. But I'm assuming he would have much of a bigger role then in the books.
Yeah, there's a lot. He appears a lot.
Right.
And there's a very firm bond that is built between Harry and Dobby.
Yeah.
Because because obviously he does the whole thing where he wants to dig Dobby's grave and he wants to do it by hand, not with magic, and that's in the film as well. But it seems mad because like he's met him like twice, and most of that time he thought he was a nightmare. So it's like
he's like pulling him down off his bed. Like,
yeah.
What are you doing?
That one nice interaction where he makes Malfoy free him.
Yes, yeah.
With the sock. Incidentally, it's so bizarre that Lucius Malfoy tries to kill Harry Potter in that corridor. He actually starts saying Avada Kedavra. Imagine how annoyed Voldemort would have been.
Now you've done it already.
Yeah, so with all of that in mind, the Dobby stuff is emotionally savage for me. It is an act of emotional violence that they killed Dobby. Like that moment where they apparate out of Malfoy Manor. Instantly, the Malfoy Manor stuff is rather hard edged. I thought.
Yeah, definitely.
It's horrible in the book. It's like one notch higher in the book.
Right. But okay.
The fact that they were carving mudblood into Hermione's arm is pretty intense.
You've just reminded me of something that, as I was going back through all the films, I couldn't believe how rife this stuff was. Mudblood, using the word mudblood like as a racial term.
Yeah.
Like I was so surprised that actually it was being thrown around left, right, and center as much as it is, and with such venom from like Malfoy as well in the first few films. Yeah.
Because when Malfoy first says it in Chamber, you know that he knows that word.
Filthy little mudblood as well. It's like
he knows the power that has. It is like viciously calling someone the N-word.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the power they are giving to that word.
Yeah. We have something similar with the set text that we do for film studies where, because we look at District 9, we talk a lot about how they use the word prawn and how that is effectively the same thing. And like just seeing it again in here, it was like, this is really like heavy stuff, that they're going through here. All right. So
the way they do Dobby it's so heartbreaking because they get that moment where they apparate out and then they're all sort of regrouping and then you just hear Harry Potter and he's like, oh, I'm gonna cry now just saying that because he gets that triumphant moment where he's like, you will not harm Harry Potter and his friends. Dobby is a free elf.
And then
then he looks around and he says it's such a nice place to be with friends and it's
dear. Right, let's do the second one then. Let's wrap this up. So obviously Hallows Part 2, the 8th and final installment of the Harry Potter film series, and this is obviously Harry's quest to find the Horcruxes and to stop him once and for all. Massive success. I don't think anyone was surprised at this. So it was a commercial success, one of the best reviewed films of 2011, earning praise for acting, Yates' direction, musical score, visual effects, cinematography, action sequences, and satisfying conclusion to the saga. It grossed 1.3 billion worldwide and was the 9th film to do so. To me, a couple of things from here. So shortest of the lot, just over 2 hours, and it is a breeze. It's an absolute breeze, this one. A bit more polyjuice for a trip back to Gringotts right at the beginning of this.
Love the polyjuice. So much of it all the time.
It's used much better, I think, as we get further on.
It's funny because it's like the opposite of the Time Turner. Because Polyjuice is like, once they used it once, that's a tool they've got in their belt now. Whereas the Time Turners, it's like, we're not worrying ourselves about that.
We don't need that again. Sack that off.
There's a line in the book that explains it. Because in the book, when they're in the Ministry at the end of Order of the Phoenix, and they're like fighting through the Ministry, they knock over a big display, which is supposed to be like the Ministry's supply of Time Turners.
Right.
It destroys them all.
We end up going back to Hogwarts as a primary location. McGonagall steps up to see Snape off after Harry gets the order into the castle, which is a great sequence.
Yes.
And it's just an epic setup. You know something big is about to go off. And again, I've written here, this was the end game before Endgame. This was you knew something was going to kick off here. That huge sweeping shot that you get of Voldemort and his army on the adjacent hilltop.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I'd written here, burnt down the bloody Quidditch pitch because for whatever reason that bothered me.
Yeah.
They burn it down. Ron and Hermione going back into the Chamber of Secrets to the Basilisk Tooth, finally kissing. Big, kind of fan service moment there. Obviously the big battle at Hogwarts, and then let's get into the kill count. So Goyle dies by fire.
Yeah. His own stupid fault.
Yeah. Lavender Brown, cheese off. The Snape death, which is up there with emotional moments of any film, taking the tears of this whole thing of him just saying, just take them. And that reveal of Snape has actually been the person who's always been looking out for Harry and not the person who, you think that he's trying to kill him, and you think that, like, in the Quidditch match in Philosopher's Stone, he's the one that's trying to, he's doing the stuff to his broom and all this kind of stuff. And it makes sense because of how much he loved Lily and how much he loved Harry's mum.
Yeah, because it's also all of their dislike for Snape is summed up in that one line Quirrell has in Philosopher's Stone, where Harry goes in and goes, "But Professor Snape," and Quirrell goes, "Yes, he does seem the type, doesn't he?" Yes, he does.
That guy that's wearing all black. Yes, we would imagine it's him.
Yes.
Oh dear. Yeah, I just think it's probably one of the most emotional sequences out of all of them.
Good. And hat tip to Alan Rickman for going his own way, because when he's dying and he crying the memory out, he says, so they take it to the pensieve, which has always been called the pensieve in everything, but Alan Rickman goes, "Take this to the pensieve," because he's a great man. Who will not be shackled by your own pronunciation. I think he's great in this movie. I think this is Alan Rickman, just peak of his powers.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because
he's wonderful.
He comes across as so conflicted as well.
Yes.
Of, I'm here to try and protect Harry. I've always been trying to protect Harry, but I've got to do this. Possibly even knowing that somewhere down the line he's going to have to sacrifice himself. Because
J.K. Rowling famously, the only person she told about Snape was Alan Rickman. Right. So he always knew where Snape was going.
Right.
And so he was able to bake that into his performance almost from day one.
Yeah.
So that
which is great.
Comes through.
So Voldemort calls for a retreat to spur magical lives, and then meets Harry solo in the forest, which I thought was a real kind of. It's very believable. It's very believable that might even be the point where he dies. We get that weird sequence in the really bright King's Cross station, and the fetus Voldemort just lying under the bench, which again is a little bit crazy. Ruby still doesn't understand that. She's like, "What's that thing under there?" And I'm like, "Just forget it. Don't matter. Don't look at it."
That's the Horcrux.
Moving back into the kill count, you get Fred, then you get Lupin and Tonks. It's just all left,
all
right.
All of them are a bit shortchanged by the film.
Yeah, they are.
Certainly, I think Lupin and Tonks don't get a big dramatic thing even in the book, but Fred.
They hold hands, don't they?
Yeah,
they hold hands. They close their eyes,
the
and then I mean, I'd gotten it confused from the last time that I saw it, where I thought George died in Half-Blood, I think, or the start of the Hallows Part 2. And then when he was better, I thought, all right, okay, clearly not. And then I remembered that it happened in this time.
Yeah.
small subplot of knowing that Harry needs to die as part of Voldemort lives in him. That idea of quite possibly you can't kill Voldemort without killing Harry. That up the stakes a little bit. Harry opening the Golden Snitch to get the Resurrection Stone. Nice. Like that. Proper throwback to the first one. Speaking to his parents, speaking to Black and Lupin, like we mentioned before. Again, really, really nice scene there. Harry meets Voldemort in the forest. Voldemort hits him with Avada Kedavra. How many times have we said it? And I just fumbled that one.
The one that Ray finds certainly doesn't fumble.
No, definitely not. He knows
the one he gives it both barrels off. Yells every syllable of it. Oh, what a moment. Ray Fiennes has such a good time in this movie because he does the laugh as well.
Yes, yeah, he does. Yeah. He's so like. Harry speaks to Dumbledore again in that sequence. Because like this idea of you're the Horcrux that he never meant to make. Again good. Fantastic bit of writing with words are, in my not so humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of inflicting injury and remedying it. Which it's great. That absolutely great. Harry and Dumbledore fight through the castle. Harry and Voldemort. Jesus Christ, I'm flipping that on its head. Through the castle after Harry feigns death with the help of Malfoy's mum. Kill count, Bellatrix by Molly. Maybe the first drop of a curse word here, but I've got to do it, guys.
Not my daughter, you bitch.
There we go. I'll let Tom do it instead. That's so great. That is so great. And actually, I remember this was around about the time where, like, again, my mum loves Harry Potter, and she'd not gone to the cinema to watch it. Me and Amy went with Amy's dad to watch it because he was adamant that he'd taken them with all of them. And, they'd been to see all of them. And I remember seeing my mum watching it on DVD, and she was just like, yes, come on, Mom, and it's such a massive moment. Nagini by Neville with the Sword of Gryffindor. And then all at the end, all grown up to see the kids after Hogwarts.
So I want to talk about two deaths. I want to talk about Bellatrix and Voldemort.
Okay.
And the reason I want to talk about them is because they kind of undercut one of the key themes.
Right.
So the key idea is that when Voldemort dies, all of the mystique disappears because he dies like a human, like a mortal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in the film, both he and Bellatrix shatter into magical dusty pieces, like they've been clipped by Thanos out of existence.
It is a bit weird, isn't it? Yeah.
So the whole thing is, when Voldemort is killed, he just falls over in a heap.
Yeah.
Like a mortal, because all of his magical mystique and his Horcruxes are gone, and he's just a man who has been bested.
Right.
And that's the whole idea, that he never managed to conquer death like he wanted to so much. He just became a man.
I've never thought about that, and how I think it's because you weirdly come to expect it, that he can't just kind of fall and limp over. Then actually,
and I think that's probably the sort of calculation that they made making the film. They went, well, it would seem a bit anticlimactic for this big supernatural villain of this franchise to just fall over like a dead man.
That's so weird.
And there are bits I hate. I hate the bit where they jump off the tower together.
Yeah.
Partly because of the flying thing.
It's like, let's just do it together, and then they both just decide to jump off.
They both land and they're fine and they're fighting again, and I didn't need that. But it's a spectacle thing, and I remember vividly that moment was in all the trailers.
Yeah, and then it's just signposted.
Yeah, and so I struggle with that. The big final confrontation between Harry and Voldemort is supposed to happen in front of everyone.
Right, and it doesn't.
They're on their own in like the courtyard while everyone else is in the hall. And so that's why it doesn't make sense that they all just stop when Voldemort gets killed. Because they didn't see it.
Yeah, yeah. So they're all just like, something feels different.
Exactly.
Like, what's happened here? Let's just stop.
I don't know if they were all really attached to Bellatrix.
Yeah.
So I've got another point about Voldemort's death.
Yeah, go.
Well, it's a question more than anything. Did you fully understand why Voldemort died?
So, the kind of thing that I pieced together from watching it again was, Nagini was the last Horcrux. So then he's really weak at that point. The Elder Wand has a crack in it, so that the power... I assumed something to do with the power that he would be putting into it isn't as strong as it could be because the wand's got a crack in it. But then he gets defeated by the Elder Wand when Harry gets it. I'm assuming it's got something to do with that.
See, the film just doesn't explain it. It does a little bit after the fact.
Right.
But...
Because Harry breaks it.
Yeah, so Voldemort was never the master of the Elder Wand.
Yeah.
So that's why the Elder Wand never did what he wanted it to. Voldemort realizes that because he talked to Ollivander and sort of understood Wand Law a little bit.
Right.
But Voldemort, being Voldemort, thought that the master of the wand was whoever killed the previous owner.
Yeah.
Which is why he has Snape killed.
Right.
Because Snape killed Dumbledore.
Okay.
But what Harry explains to Voldemort, I think he explains it to him a little bit in the film, is that Snape was never the master of the Elder Wand either.
Right.
Malfoy was, because he disarmed Dumbledore.
Yeah,
so Malfoy beat Dumbledore, and so that's why he was the master of the Elder Wand.
Yeah, there's a thing on the bridge at the end, isn't there? And I think he's explaining it to Ron and Hermione.
Yeah. And he explains it a little bit, but in the book he gets a big speech before he kills him about that.
Right.
So he explains that Draco Malfoy was the master of the Elder Wand, and so when Harry disarms Draco at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 1 in their house, Harry becomes master of the Elder Wand.
Right. Okay.
Which is why it obeys him and allows him to kill Voldemort.
Of course. That makes sense.
But that's like the film barely bothers with that.
Yeah, no, I think because surely to your kind of mainstreamy audience of Booth Irish one, like that's easier, isn't it? Rather than all this.
And then there's a really nice moment in the book, which I don't understand why they didn't put in the film, where so the whole thing at the end is that Harry theoretically has possession of all 3 Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
Because he's always had the cloak, which they never really explain is a Hallow in the films.
No, not really.
Because in the book they do this whole thing where, because invisibility cloaks are a thing that other people have.
Yeah.
But they do a thing that the one that's a Hallow will never like fade or decay.
Right. Okay.
And then Lovegood says like, yeah, but there's never been one like that. And all 3 of them like look at each other and go, yeah, there is. Yeah. We got that one. And then, of course, he had the Resurrection Stone in the forest. And then at the end, he has the Elder Wand. So he's theoretically got all 3 Hallows.
Yeah.
But what he does is, because you see in the film, he drops the stone in the forest. He says, I've got no intention of going back and getting that. I'm going to let it live there in the forest where no one knows where it is. And then he takes the Elder Wand and uses it to repair his own snapped wand, his original wand. So, and then he throws away the Elder Wand.
Yeah.
But you never see him repair his own wand with it. So he just throws away the Elder Wand and then he doesn't have a wand.
Well, I did think that at the end. I thought, what are you going to do now? Like,
yeah. But no, because in the books, there's this whole thing where he keeps the shards of his own wand that got destroyed.
Yeah.
And then he fixes it with
and then repairs it with, right.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should read the books.
So he has no intention of being master of death, as it were.
Yeah.
But
I think I might read
something else that the film doesn't have time for. Because the reason he has the cloak is because he's descended from the Peveril family, whose grave we see in the films in Godric's Hollow. Right. He's descended from them, and so that's why the invisibility cloak has passed down all the way to him.
There's so much. It's just like I'm going to read them. And this is my plan now. I'm going to read them, even if it's to Ruby. Right.
No,
okay. Then.
So they do bungle some of it, but and people laugh at the 19 years later thing.
Yeah.
People have a giggle about it, but I think it is actually quite emotionally poignant. I do think it's good. The old age makeup is a little bit squiff.
I think there's a lot to be said about how they have a little bit of apprehension of we're sending our kids to this massive place that did so much for us and meant so much for us, and we basically were formed there and all this stuff. But then also knowing that, well, surely it's safe now because we've made it safe. Yeah.
Because they sort of try and find a reason for it in the film. Because in the book, it's just like, we mentioned those John Hughes movies at the end where they bring the title cards up and it's like, so and so went on to do this.
Oh yeah.
That's all it is in the book. They just say, here's what all the characters did, because they talk to the kids about, when you're at Hogwarts, go and give Professor Longbottom our love. Because he's teaching herbology or something.
Yeah.
And they explain the jobs they've all got at the ministry and stuff.
Right, okay.
But in the film, it's just like, and I think it's quite nice because it is literally just that little moment where they're all meeting up again to send their kids off. There's that nice little talk between Harry and Albus Severus because he's worried about being put into Slytherin.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry tells him about the Sorting Hat, which he's never told anyone.
Yeah.
About how you can tell it not to put you in Slytherin.
Yeah, and it will just do what you ask it to.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're going to go down the route of doing The Cursed Child as a film?
Yeah, they will eventually, won't they?
Yeah.
There's no way they're leaving that money on the table.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah.
No way at all. So they're making these Fantastic Beasts films, and they announced very heavy-handedly they were going to do 5, and then the second one underperformed. And then COVID happened, and then Johnny Depp happened, and
oh dear.
But they are filming it as we speak. They're shooting Fantastic Beasts 3.
Let them do it.
And then HBO Max, I think, are doing a series set in the world of Harry Potter.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
I don't think it's going to have Harry in it or anything. But yeah, they will do. Whether they'll use the original cast members when they've aged up, I don't know.
They could. I don't know. Anyway,
but they will eventually do a film of it. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I can't see it being for quite some time. I think they'll finish up Fantastic Beasts. They want to give the stage show time to run.
Yeah, because I think maybe not a tour of it, but it needs more time to be embedded, I think. Yeah.
Because that's what Lin-Manuel Miranda's always said about his shows. That he won't do films of them until they've had their run. So like In the Heights is getting its film now.
Because
it had been off, not performing for so long. Hamilton has got whatever, the Disney Plus thing, but it's not the same as doing a film version.
No. Because I think with something like Hamilton, that's just right. I mean, it's only been on the West End for a couple of years, not including like all this COVID stuff. And eventually it's going to do a massive nationwide tour, and it's going to get all the legs out of that, before you get anything. And I think the issue with The Cursed Child is that it's so kind of, you've seen part 1, you're going to watch part 2 either the same day or the day after, that actually you wonder how they might be able to do something like that nationwide, but they'd figure it out, I'm sure. Yeah. Okie doke. So, one thing that I thought of actually before we finish is about, if you now were in this kind of like box set culture, how would you binge Harry Potter? Now, it's not a kind of Star Wars question of let's do 6 first and do whatever, but I think if it was open to you, you probably would just do all 8 back to back, but who has time for that? But actually, and this might seem really obvious, a split down the middle actually works quite well, because you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 that are all individual main cases, like Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Sirius Black, Triwizard, and then 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all really interconnected with this idea that Voldemort's back.
That's it. So you end part 1 with the return of Voldemort, and then part 2 is how do you get rid of him?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that works pretty well.
Yeah.
Right, let's do our rankings.
I did it last week. I rewatched them, and we just did it based on how many we could fit in around our schedule
as soon as possible.
Yeah. So we did 1, 2, 3 one day, and we did 4 and 5 the next day, and then 6, 7, and 8. But
fair enough,
because we knew we were going to go through them all. But I think if you are looking for like a clear division, then absolutely half and half really works.
Yeah, straight down the middle. Right, rankings then. So what I'm going to do, let's see how well this works and my maths works. We'll go worst to best, and then I'm going to try and see if we can get like a joint ranking of an agreement of both of us. Right. So, worst to best. Your least favourite then?
Half-Blood Prince, easy.
Half-Blood Prince, right. So mine is Hallows Part 1. So next then, mine would be Half-Blood Prince.
Goblet of Fire.
Oh, look how low down that is. Oh, sacrilege. Right. Next, I'm on Chamber of Secrets.
Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Okay. Fifth? Does that? Yeah, I'm just looking at it in reverse order. Right. So next then.
This is where it gets really hard now.
Yeah.
I think Philosopher's Stone.
Oh, okay. So I've gone Order of the Phoenix though. So then my one after that is Philosopher's Stone.
Order of the Phoenix.
Okay. Nice switcheroo there. So then we are essentially on first, second, and third top choices. So your third choice.
Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Oh, that's low. Low to me. Okay. Mine is Goblet of Fire there. As my third favourite. So your second favourite?
Chamber of Secrets.
Whoa, so high. So high. Mine there is Deathly Hallows Part 2. And then surely we're in agreement.
We are.
That it's Azkaban.
Yes, indeed.
So, how quick can I do maths? Right. Bear with. Right, okay. So, this would mean then, in reverse order, least favourite is Half-Blood Prince. Then Deathly Hallows Part 1. Then Goblet of Fire, which...
Oh, pleased with that.
Cannot agree with how low down that is. Then middle of the table is Order of the Phoenix. Then Philosopher's Stone. Then Chamber of Secrets, because of how many points it got off you putting it at number 2. Then Deathly Hallows Part 2. And then the best being Prisoner of Azkaban. Oh, it's dear. That 4 and 2 that I'd swap around, and I'd be happy.
No, as I said at the time when we talked about it, I have a lot of affection for Chamber of Secrets. I think it's partly like time it caught me. It's one of the first cinema experiences I really, really vividly remember. And those first 2 are the ones I've gone back to the most.
Yeah, to be fair, I think that would be it, because I really latched on to Azkaban and then was so kind of back into the lore with Deathly Hallows Part 2 that I was just like, they're clearly the best too. And that was always my opinion, moving forward and stuff like that. And Azkaban probably is the one that I've gone back to the most.
Yeah. What I'm most shocked by, as we said when we talked about it, is Order of the Phoenix, because I would probably have had that second bottom before this rewatch.
That's definitely the one that I've gone back to and thought, wow, I really think differently now,
That's it. And I had it number 4, I think, on this ranking. So
yeah,